Picture this, you are at an op shop sourcing, you are flicking through the racks, finding some really good quality stuff, checking as you go for any issues, and thrilled when you find things that are good enough quality to pick up until you get them home, you're processing that new inventory, and lo and behold, there are flaws that you have missed. I think as resellers, we can all relate to this. I, even with, years of experience under my belt, am no exception. All of these items behind me have flaws that I missed while I was sourcing them. So today, we're gonna have a little flick through my rack, see if you could have picked up on what the issues are, but we're also going to fix them together and take a bit of a look at the amount of time that it takes to get these ready for resale. So that said, let's jump in and see if you could have spotted these issues. We're going to dive right in with one that I think may be easy on camera, but for whatever reason, I overlooked this in the op shop, and that is with these pair of peri-cotton wool pants. These are a fantastic corporate staple style. They're a nice wool crepe material, so it was a no-brainer to pick these up for me, especially because they are a size 16. But I'll just give you a second here. See if you can spot what is wrong with this item. Hopefully you can see the lining peeking out from the bottom of the pant legs there. So given that these are a wool style, I would anticipate that what has happened here is that someone has washed these incorrectly, which has led to a little bit of a shrinkage in the wool. It's not a huge deal breaker. They haven't lost enough length to kind of not be resaleable, but the lining peeking out is definitely not ideal. This next one might be harder to spot, pun intended, because we've got this lovely spotty leopard print. This is a stunning Kitten d'Amour dress, and I think what happened here, I mean, it's a hard issue given the style, but I also was very excited when I found this. I think it was just that thrill of the hunt took over, and I was maybe a little less kind of detail oriented than I should be. But let's see if you can pick the issue with this particular style. So I didn't notice when I sourced this, but this dress is actually missing 2 buttons on the front. So you've got 3 remaining, which is good. It means that I've got some options for hair. I have checked the internal tag. I think from memory there was not a spare button on there, so I'm a bit limited. But this one should be fairly easy to get looking nice again and get rid of this kind of gap between the top and bottom buttons here. Another dress, another size 16 trennery, so again, a bit of a no-brainer for me to pick up, and at first glance, this actually looks pristine. This issue is hidden really well because of the style and the pattern, again, similar to the last dress that I saw there, but also the location of this issue. So if you can't spot it in the comments, I won't be surprised at all with this dress, but there are some beginnings of tearing underneath the sleeve. So a little hole on this side here is just some kind of snagging or pulling near the buttons at the front there too. So some minor repairs, again, fairly low effort, but definitely at the moment not ideal for resale. Now, this next one is new with tags, which you would hopefully assume that if it's new with tags, it's going to be in pristine condition, right? This one probably has one of the most common issues that I see, and probably one of the most common issues that I miss. And again, I won't be surprised if you can't spot this. It's a very ditzy fabric. There's a lot going on here. But the issue with this one is just at the bottom of the invisible zip here. So quite common with these style of zips that the stitching at the base of the zip will start to undo. So again, this is a relatively easy, like a low effort, quick fix. Even though I didn't pick this particular issue up in the op shop, I would still have purchased this dress had I known that it had that little defect. And then the next two are probably going to be, honestly, the easiest fixes of all. But again, we'll do the same thing here. We might tackle them both at once, see if you can spot any particular issues with these dresses. I would be quite comfortable guessing that this is one, again, of the most common issues you're going to see when you're sourcing for, you know, a secondhand business from op shops. So that is minor marks. Again, like at first glance, this dress looks okay. It has just a little tiny mark on the hem here that needs a bit of a clean, and then again some really superficial white marks on the denim there. So that is just going to be popped straight in the washing machine. I will hang it out, she'll be dry and she'll be fresh and clean and nice for her new home. And similarly, this really stunning witchery dress, I really love this style with the pleats. I did kind of think in the op shop that maybe there was an issue, but it wasn't until I got it home in some better lighting, and hopefully you'll be able to see here. This just has some light marking or discoloration, maybe, I don't know, maybe some makeup or something on the front of it. It's a polyester dress. This is going to be super easy with some stain remover. Again, give her a spray, pop her in the washing machine, and she is going to come out looking fresh and new. So there you go. Like I said, drop in the comments if you spotted any of those issues as I was working my way through those ones. All relatively common. Probably this one with the lining poking out is going to be where there's the most effort to fix. But again, had I known about these issues in the op shop when I was making that buying decision for these items, they probably wouldn't have been a deal breaker. So I'd encourage you, you know, to have a think about the amount of effort you want to be putting into repairs, because sometimes 5-10 minutes repairing something can result in a really profitable outcome if you're willing to pick up those items. But now that we know what the issues are, let's jump in and fix them. I'm going to go through these items one by one. I'm going to provide you a bit of an overview of the approach that I'm going to take to fix each of these items, and then I'm going to share that actual process with you with timestamps. So as with most things in my business, I like to tackle the hard stuff up front and then progressively get easier, so that as I get more tired, things are getting easier and I have to rely less on motivation. So just get the hard stuff out of the way, get things done. So that said, I am going to start with the pants because I think that's where the most effort is. But what I'll do is talk you through how I am planning to approach this. This is probably the one key bit of advice I have when you are tackling repairs, is to spend 5 minutes first before you pick up anything, thinking through the approach, because that's going to make it easier in the long run. You don't want to just pick up a needle and thread and start haphazardly stitching things together and hope for the best. Particularly if you're like me, like I'm a relatively novice sewer. I have some basic sewing skills, nothing fancy. I don't have a sewing machine, I hand stitch everything, I've only got a few supplies, so I want to have a good idea of how I'm going to approach things before I jump in. So that being said, let me talk you through how I plan to fix this issue with this lining peeking out of the bottom here. So firstly, I'm just starting to look at how the existing lining has been hemmed. So if I look at this, you can see I've only lost maybe a centimetre and a half of length of the pants. So I just need to make sure that I can tidy up that lining a bit so that it doesn't show. The lining here, the hem is already sort of on the outside of that leg. The easiest approach for me is, I think, going to be to just fold it along the existing hemline, pin that, and then see how that looks once we flip our pant leg back down, whether that's going to give me enough length. So to do that, I'm just grabbing my sewing pins. As you can see, you can just grab these at like Spotlight, they're nothing fancy, and I'm going to go around and pin that. But before I do, I'm going to start my timer so that I can let you know how long this whole process is taking me. Now, because at the moment I just want to test this length, I'm not pinning the whole way around. I've just popped one in the front and in the back, kind of as close as that I can get to that hemline. And I just want to fold these down and see how that looks. So if we compare both legs then, you can see the difference that makes straight away. So that is tidying up that cuff of the leg there. It's getting me just inside the pant leg. I think I might take it up a little bit further, but then I'll repeat on this side, make sure we're even before I start stitching. Now that I have both of the legs pinned, I just want to give them a little bit of a test to make sure I've accounted for gravity and that, you know, the lining's not going to fall out again when I pick them up. I think that's looking pretty good. So I have also given them just a really quick press on a low setting with the iron, and now I'm going to get to stitching these up. So now that I'm ready to sew these up, I just have some black thread, a needle, and we're going to get straight to it. So with these type of repairs, when it comes to attaching a lining, I like to use just a quick like looping stitch, nothing, I don't know the name, I don't know any technical names of stitches, so I'll tie this on here. And then I try to keep it so that the stitches are fairly invisible just by picking up kind of the inside of both sides of the fabric, not, you know, creating huge stitches or anything like that. So this is going to be difficult because it's black thread on black fabric, but if you're not, you know, not familiar with sewing, or, you know, you want to pick up some skills, hopefully you'll be able to see this so that you can kind of get the gist of what I'm doing. But so I've tied that on just at the side seam, and I'm just going to go close to 1 centimeter, I guess. Like, it doesn't need to be super close together. And I'm just picking up the tiniest bits of fabric on each side and getting it stuck immediately on a pin. This is my novice sewing in action. And I'm just going to repeat that. So I'm not, you know, doing a back stitch or anything where I'm having to go back. I'm just going forward, picking up a small amount of fabric on each side, pulling through. And I'll repeat this the whole way around until everything is securely attached. Timer's still going, so we're 12 minutes to do all the pinning and measuring at the moment. So let's see how long the stitching on one side takes. All right, we're at 15 minutes, so it's taken me about 3 minutes to get halfway around one leg, and hopefully you can see on the camera. The other thing to consider here is I'm not like pulling these stitches really tight. I'm just keeping them nice and loose so they don't cause any unnecessary cinching. I am nearly out of thread, so I'm just going to finish tying off this side. I'm going to grab some new thread and go around the other leg. Might have seen here, I've just made a mistake and I'm struggling to rethread my needle. This is the most frustrating part about repairs. And this is why I encourage you to proceed slowly, because things like this, while can be meditative, can be frustrating as well. But we're back on. Okay, that is the last stitch on the first side. Just pull that little tail through and tie off. Make sure she's nice and secure. And so for one leg, we started at 12 minutes. We are just at 21 minutes now. So just under 10 minutes to go the whole way around on that lining. I'm just going to snip these little threads and tidy up those ends. And then we will rinse and repeat. On to the last side. There we go. No more lining peeking out of the bottom of those pants, and that took all up 31 minutes. So about 20 minutes of sewing to get these ready for resale. All right, as you may be able to tell, maybe not from the costume change, it's a few days later, and that's going to bring me to my next tip. When you're doing these type of repairs, particularly if you're a novice like me, it can get frustrating. Don't continue while you're frustrated. Set it aside, come back to it later, and jump in when you're feeling calm and ready to tackle the tasks again. So with the last pair of pants, given the amount of time that it took, I decided just to pop it all away and come back to these. It's been about a week, and I'm going to continue with these repairs. The next items in my queue are going to be the two really ditzy pattern pieces, and the reason being, for the repairs on each of these, if you remember, this one was just like a little bit at the bottom of the zip. This one was under the arm here. There's a bit of a hole and just near the button. These I anticipate are both going to be fairly quick fixes, and they both are going to use the same thread. So I keep it simple with my sewing kit. I have black, grey and white thread. White is going to be the thread for both of these. The thread, like the stitching on this one, is white, and I think it's going to blend pretty seamlessly with the colours in this dress. So shouldn't be too much chopping and changing between, and I think I can tackle them quickly. So that said, let's take a closer look at both of these and see what approach I'm going to use. So as I said before, I'm going to continue to work from hardest to easiest, and what I think is going to be the hardest of these repairs is this bit here next to the buttons on the front. It's just some stitching that's kind of pulled away due to the type of the fabric, but why I think this is going to be hardest is concealing the stitches. So I'm actually going to go from the front here. I'm going to try and keep my stitches nice and small and invisible, and just pull this, cinch this a little bit tighter so that we lose this bit of gaping here. And as with last time, I'm going to go in and start my timer now so we can actually see how long this one takes. Try and pick up the smallest bits of fabric kind of between where these panels are meeting and pull it tight. That's looking good. I'm going to tie this off and then I will show you what it looks like finished. So this is our repair here, and you can see we've lost that kind of gape between the seam of the buttons and the dress itself. Nice easy repair and super invisible stitches. You'll remember though that this dress had two issues. The other is this hole here. This is right under the sleeve, so it was well concealed from me when I sourced this dress. Very similar approach here, but what I'm going to do is approach this from the wrong side of the dress. So this time around, we can see that it's actually properly torn the seam. The solution here is that I'm actually going to have to pull this bit of fabric up to meet the edge of the seam, just to close that hole. It will cause a little bit of pleating under the arm, but nothing extreme enough to cause any real noticeable changes to the way the dress wears. Oh, I should also have said, how long did that original one take me? We're just over 8 minutes for that first repair, but let's get stuck into this one now. So I'm going to try and keep this stitch in line with the existing seam on the other side. So I want this to be, again, as invisible as possible, and I'm just going to pass my needle back and forth, loop it sort of back, so a bit of a back stitch on this one, different to what we've been doing previously, to create a really secure seam. I'm nearly at a natural stopping point here. So what I mean by that is past the end of the existing issue, but I want to make sure that it's secure enough that it's not going to kind of continue to tear further down that seam. So all I'm going to do is kind of extend my stitches a little past where that original hole was forming under the arm there. And then I'm going to tie off this repair. I think that might do it. To tie this one off, I'm just going to pick up some fabric here and create a loop on one side. I'm not going to worry too much about going back through all sides of the fabric because that should be nice and secure now. So I'm just going to pass through my loop a couple of times. Secure that knot, and then we'll clean up those threads again. So this is what it now looks like on the inside of the sleeve, and this is the little tiny pleat I was talking about here that you'll see. But let's see how she looks when I flip her around the right way. So you can see now, this is the sleeve. This here is where the hole was, looking much, much better. So all up, to repair those two issues, 17 minutes for this dress. And now we are on to this one here. So again, you'll recall the issue with this one is just at the bottom of the zip. And this is a really, really common issue where garments like this have an invisible zipper. You often find that just at the bottom, maybe someone has like pulled it a little bit too far, but it's been snagged here, and you can see the kind of threads being pulled out of the garment. So very, very similar. I think for this one, am I going to approach it from inside or out? I think it's going to be easiest to approach from the inside of the garment. I can see where the gap is at the base of the zipper here, so I'm just going to follow that. Tiny little hole that might need a bit of repair as well, but that should be, again, a nice, quick, easy one to fix. So again, I'm going to reset my timer and let's see how long this one takes. The other tip I have here is to get used to turning the fabric to the side that you're passing the needle to, so you can actually see how everything is coming together before you pull your thread, and that just gives you an opportunity to reposition the point of your needle if you need to. I think this is looking fairly good now. Before I tie this one off though, I'm just going to flip it over and see how it's looking from the right side of the fabric. So that's gotten us, I think, to a nice level at the end of the zip there. Still a couple of threads on this side, but just by kind of bringing my last few stitches lower, I've been able to close that hole that was here into the seam as well. So as I said here, we've got a couple of little threads that we need to snip off on this side as well. I'll do that quickly now. Just being extra careful not to pick up the fabric while we do so. And that's looking much better. Still a little bit of like a raw edge there, but I'll just make a note of that in my listing. And that one took us, oh. Well, my timer didn't work on that one for some reason. Cass from the future here, we all know why it didn't work. We clocked it earlier, but this one took me 7 minutes. Excuse the tippy taps. I need someone to go and lie on the couch with a carpet. Hey. Or even behind me would be good. For our last repair, I'm bringing back the ironing board because this one involves a little measuring. Probably harder than the last two repairs. I should have done it up front, but here we are. So this one may have been a bit hard to see in the initial shots, but there are 2 buttons missing. So we've got button here, and button here. There should be 2 in the middle. So I did check, and I recommend always checking when you've got missing buttons to see if there's one on the care tag. Often you'll find them sewn on. Unfortunately, there's no spare button here for me to work with. So that means I need to have a look at some options to reposition either one or both of these bottom buttons and move them up. So what that means to begin with is I'm going to remove this button from the dress, because regardless whether I move one button to the middle here or both buttons up a spot, this button is moving. So let's make a start on that, and then we can have a bit of a play with our options for this dress. But before I do that, let me restart my timer properly this time so we can see how long this repair takes. Key when removing buttons, and I really should be using my seam ripper, is to go slowly. I don't want to accidentally snip the fabric, but we managed to get it off without doing any amount of damage here, which is fantastic. So now we have a button here and a button here and this gap in between. I think ideally I only want to re-sew one button. So I'll have a bit of a play with positioning this button in the center of these two. So if I just grab my measuring tape, they are 28 centimeters apart. So 14 centimeters here. I'm going to mark with a pin. Is the dead center. And I just want to see how that looks. I think it looks pretty good. I think I want to go with minimum effort on this repair, so this is going to be the approach that I take. There are a couple of other things that I need to consider here, and they are how far in this button is from the edge. It looks like about 2 centimeters. Yep, bang on, 2 centimeters. So where I have this positioned here is looking pretty good at the moment. I am going to go and pop another pin here to sort of mark both of my coordinates for this button. So that's where I need to position this one. And then these buttons are also passing through multiple layers of fabric. So I'm going to have to secure this one through multiple layers of fabric, which means my Probably best approach is going to be to come from the top, maybe. Maybe if I pick up the fabric layers that I need, fold her at this point, and then sew on that way. I think that's going to be it. All right, got my plan. I'm going to grab my thread and I'm going to try not to make a mess of this one. I also want to make sure that the buttons lined up similarly so the holes are going the right way. Oh, this I'm feeling is going to be a challenge. I think I might tie it on just to one side and hope that that's going to make it easier to pass through the rest of the fabric. Ultimately, this is a decorative button, so there's a little room for error here, considering like it's not going to have to pass through a buttonhole. But this is also a rare kitten d'Amour dress, which I do expect to sell for maybe $150 to $200. So if I'm asking a premium for this dress, I want any repairs to be done to a high standard. Okay, so that is the finished product. We now have 3 buttons evenly spaced on the front of this dress. Really, you know, at first glance, unless you know the style of this dress down to a T, you're not going to know that there's a button missing here. It looks as though that's how it's supposed to be. And all up, we are at just over 14 minutes, including all of the measuring and faffing around to decide the best approach. So there you go. All of these items are now repaired and ready for new homes. You may ask, is it worth it? To me, it is. Circular fashion, sustainable fashion is one of the core values of my business. And for me, to spend a little time repairing to get these items to, you know, the right home in the future, rather than just taking them back to the op shop where maybe they'll go through that endless cycle of buy, find an issue, redonate, and end up in a landfill. It's worth it to me. As I've mentioned, like, my skills are very novice, so this is something I believe any of you can do if you can pick up a needle and thread and just start to practice. It can be really frustrating, of course, like anything when you're learning, but if you just stick with it, you might find that items with minor flaws like these still have great profit to be made as well. So, let me show you how these ones cleaned up while I'm at it. So you remember there was a mark kind of around here on the first one that has come out really easily just with some stain remover in the wash. Polyester, if you see marks on it, don't shy away from it. It's really easy to clean, just whack it straight in the washing machine. And this one as well came up a treat, looking nice and spick and brand new. So yeah, I know this is something a little bit different. Obviously, sitting watching someone sew might not be for everyone, but if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you like seeing content about reselling in Australia, particularly thrifting, you know, sourcing from op shops to find things to flip, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm bringing out new content regularly, and I'd love to see you on the next one. Thanks. Have a great day.